hello. Welcome to the channel. My name's Nik Oak, and I realized I've never really done a proper introduction video. I've never really properly introduced myself, so I figured I'd do that today. So yeah, my name's Nik. I am a Norse Pagan, and I thought I'd kind of go into a little bit about what that means for me and what my beliefs are and how my beliefs have changed over time. I was raised in a very Christian home, and I never really felt any connection to it. It was just sort of something that we did to me. It wasn't something that I felt like um, an emotional bond with. It was something that I felt was something that I was forced to do, basically. Um, and At least in the denomination that I was raised in at the time when I was a child, we were basically taught that there were Christians and there were atheists. And at least for the kids, we didn't really get a lot of talks about people in other religions, and we certainly didn't get into conversations about other people's beliefs that were different than the denomination that I was in. So I grew up basically thinking there are Christians and then there are atheists. And when I got to be about 12 or 13, I was really realizing I don't feel a connection to any of this stuff. So I thought by default that made me an atheist. So I was one of those angry 13-year-old atheists who was just hate everything about Christianity, and super bitter and angry and frankly really mean. And a little while later, I started to I started to eventually refuse to go to church, and that actually helped a lot just with feeling okay. But I started to get curious about how there were so many other religions in the world, and I knew basically nothing about them. So, like the little nerd that I was and am, I went to the library and I found an entire section of the library devoted to all kinds of different religions around the world, and here in North America, so many people who believe so many vastly different things, and I was just fascinated. I thought, wow, this is so interesting. Why weren't we talking about this? Because in the community that I grew up in, it was just it wasn't something that was really presented to me, and I found it really hard to understand how it seemed like I was raised around people who never really considered that somebody else could believe something different than them just as firmly as they believed what they believed. That was a weird way of phrasing it. I hope that the meaning that I meant came across there. But yeah, it just seemed to think that the particular denomination of Christianity that we were in, that the people within it were just statistically improbably lucky enough to have been born into exactly the right faith, and everyone else was secretly wanting to be them. I don't know. It felt really weird to me. It felt like a really self-centered way of looking at the world, and I don't know. And I was, well, keep in mind, that's how I felt back then. I should specify. That's not so much how I feel now. I'll get into that later. Trying to stay chronological here. So I ended up reading a lot at the library um, in the world religion section because I was curious about all of this stuff that it felt like it had been kept from me. Was sort of the feeling that I had back then of like there's all this very interesting information, and it's very interesting to see how different religions within religions have like such huge diversity even within a religion in what their beliefs are and how they interpret their holy texts if they have holy texts, or how they have different practices even within one type of religion, to the point where it really got me to re-examine how I viewed Christianity, because within Christianity there is a huge variety of how people practice, and I think that's something that really helped me to release at least a little bit of my anger of like I was seeing them very stereotypically for how atheists see Christians sometimes, of like seeing them as a stereotype, seeing them as like a, I think the term that people use is like seeing them as like a monolith, of like seeing them as all the same, and that's not fair. It's not fair, and it's like not accurate at all. And it was very cruel of me to behave that way, but at the same time I was 13 and I was stupid. So um anyway, I wasn't really searching, at least not consciously. I wasn't like, ooh, I'm looking for something that I feel connected to. I had no conscious desire, at least, to find a religion or spirituality that felt like home to me. That wasn't on my to-do list back then. I was just reading because I found it interesting. And then I ended up um, reading about paganism, both in ancient times and in the modern day. And I was very surprised when I started to realize that the interest that I was developing for paganism, uh, it started to be very obviously more than a passing interest to me. And I felt, sorry, just adjusting. I felt really weird about that because I honestly was very judgmental of myself, because I had such a negative viewpoint of religion and spirituality. Even though I was reading about all this stuff, I kind of thought I had like a superiority complex about it still. Like of like, oh, that's things for other people. Keep in mind, please, I was a teenager. And I was very like angry and stuff. I'm laughing because it's like it's funny to me now, and I think it's the thing of like people go through, people have to process their emotions in their own time. Yeah, so the interest that I had in it was definitely more than a passing interest. So I decided to actually first of all acknowledge to myself that it was more than a passing interest. And some of the books that I read during that time period, let's see if I have any of them still. Okay, well, it doesn't look like I actually have held on to any of the ones that I read in that time period, because a lot of them aren't really relevant to my spiritual practice now. But some of the ones that I've read were ones that a lot of people my age read at in that the time period where I was doing this reading. So a couple that I can think of off the top of my head would be anything by Scott Cunningham. Scott Cunningham is a Wiccan author who he's passed away a while ago, but he was writing a lot of stuff um, about Wicca, but with some of it was for the intention of providing information to people who were not in covens, which is a whole thing that I won't get into because I am not a Wiccan and I don't have a horse in that race. And if you want to know more about how people feel about solitary Wicca, versus coven based Wicca and all of that. Just please go look at videos from Wiccans, please. I'm not the guy I'm not the guy to talk about that. But he's an author that a lot of people read first when they're getting into paganism. It's just one of the ones that everybody reads. I don't know. It just comes up a lot, I guess, and is like pretty influential. But other than that, I I did read some Silver Raven Wolf. I personally would not recommend her. Silver, I think her name is Silver Raven Wolf. Raven Silver, no, Raven Silver Wolf, Silver Raven, one of those two. Anyway, I would not recommend her. I remember reading it and thinking this woman has watched a lot of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something. Like that was the impression that I got from reading. I think a couple of her books. So I wouldn't personally recommend her. What else did I read? I read a lot about specific interests that I had. So I've been a lifelong lucid dreamer. I was lucid dreaming before I even knew what it. I didn't know that not everybody lucid dreams. As a kid, it was just like a normal part of my life. I've basically like I don't know how to explain it other than like it's just a normal part of dreaming for me. It's and that's not I don't lucid dream like every single night. But I would say that it comes and goes for me. So sometimes I'll even lucid dream like a couple times a week, but sometimes I'll lucid dream more like once every month or two. And sometimes there'll be a lot of them, and sometimes there'll be a lot fewer of them for a while. But it's just something where um, when I realized that not everybody does that, that was another thing where I was like, whoa, that's really interesting. And I was like, I can't imagine not realizing that you can do this because it's absolutely fascinating. Like to go in a dream and be like, I want to like materialize a door and go to a different place. It just like it blew my mind that this is not like a universal experience. So I started reading a lot about that too, and I actually do have some books that I can recommend on that topic. I can also make another entire video on this topic if you want like book recommendations because some of the books are really good and some of them aren't. But I'll grab a couple um, just to show you some of the ones that I like. All right, so I've grabbed two books. So I always got really frustrated with that. Same as with a lot of um, like beginner like witchcraft books. There's a lot of repetition, and after a while, you're just like, okay, what's next? So I would say if you've read a couple like beginner lucid dreaming books, and if you're at the point where you're getting lucid and you can do that, that's generally where a lot of the beginner books stop. They're just like, okay, you figured out how to get lucid now, goodbye. And then that's kind of like, okay, yeah, but what do I do now that I am lucid, right? Is the next question. So this book, some of it is just like, how do you get lucid? But from what I remember of reading it, it was actually really interesting because like it also explains different stages of sleep, and it goes into becoming lucid. So okay, so becoming lucid and staying lucid brings you about to like page 100, and then there's a whole like 150 pages that is more than that, beyond that, which is why I really like this book. I especially remember enjoying the parts of it that commented on dream characters or dream figures. People call them different things, but like symbols or people, whatever you want to refer to them, people that are walking around in the dream, and how you can go about approaching them and interacting with them, because that's that's a whole topic that gets very interesting. But you'll realize very quickly if you are lucid in a dream that different people in the dream are different levels of aware of what's going on and of you, and different levels of aware of like that it is a dream. some of them know. And some of them don't know how to speak. And I've got a lot of very interesting thoughts on all of the things to be explored with what even are they? So that's a topic that they delve into a bit. The second one that I really liked was this one. Now, this one I haven't read in a very long time, full disclosure. I read it a very many years ago. But from what I remember, there were a lot more personal stories in this one, which I really, really appreciated. Because it's really nice to hear from people who also actually are experiencing these things and not just people who are like I mean, you see this on YouTube where a lot of the channels, there's a lot of like AI swap channels basically, which are basically just rehashing the same like 5 ways to get lucid, and it's really freaking annoying because it's I like some of them work, sure, but it's I actually want to like hear from a human about like actual things that they've experienced. So that's yeah. So it's called. Sorry, I didn't even say what they're called. The first one is called A Field Guide to Lucid Dreaming: Mastering the Art of Oneronautics, and it's by Dylan Tukilo, Jared Zeisel, and Thomas Peisel. And I'm sorry if I've probably mispronounced all of those names. My apologies. And then this one is Conscious Dreaming, a unique 9 step approach to understanding dreams, and it's by Robert Moss. So, anyway, moving on from that. So, I was doing a lot of reading. I definitely got to the point where I was like, okay, this actually is something where I'm curious. And um, I ended up sort of trying out some of the things that I was reading about, and also dipping my toes into ritual and celebrating the Wheel of the Year. And if you don't know, the Wheel of the Year is basically a calendar of holidays that a lot of pagans use. So it's the solstices and the equinoxes, and the halfway point between the solstice and the equinoxes. I was doing that for a while, and I was also thinking about like how do I think about deity, and that was a tough one for me because I had a really bad um, I had a really negative association with the word God or the word deity, and so the way that I classified myself back then is that I viewed the world through a pantheistic kind of lens and an animistic kind of lens. So I very much saw deity as like existence, and sort of like existence um, learning and growing by having a bunch of experiences through all of us, every living thing. And it was more like God is everything kind of thing instead of like a specific being. And that's how I felt for a really, really long time. And I also started practicing witchcraft. And that was something that I actually, um, it, I was very surprised by how uh, it felt so natural to me. It felt like something that um, it felt like in some ways it was something that I had been doing all along, but I just had better words to describe it now because I've always been an artist, and the way that I think about witchcraft and magic is very much that, at least for the stuff that I do, it functions like a painting or like music. It uses symbolism and sensory cues to affect real change on your body and mind. And I also sometimes like to call it the placebo effect on manual. Because the thing is, like the placebo effect, it is something that is creating real change, but it's also something that people are intentionally doing, and it works. So, yeah, that's how I see it. Either works like a painting, or the placebo effect on manual. And I can go more into that in a video if you want me to. But I'm trying to get through a lot of information very quickly and not get sidetracked too much. But yeah, I'm pretty bad at not getting sidetracked. So anyway, fast forward 10 years, and I'm trying to sort of find community, and I started to get in contact with various people in person, and that was really great. I was really glad to finally be able to talk to real people about my beliefs and my views and experiences instead of just reading books. And I think my only complaint about that time of my life is that I wasn't very willing to be open with people, but that wasn't paganism specific. That was just that period of my life. I wasn't terribly comfortable being vulnerable with people, being open with new people. So as a result, I didn't get as close to people as I could have. And at that time, I still very much identified as a pantheist. I didn't really believe in deities in any version of that term, really. I didn't believe in them as archetypes. I didn't believe in them um, as independent beings like hard polytheists. And I didn't identify as a polytheist. And then some pretty big things changed for me. Um, I started to feel drawn to Freya, who is a Norse goddess, and I didn't really know how to feel about that. But I decided to look into books that I could find, and it got to a point where like it was getting. This is gonna sound really stupid. It got to the point where it was actually getting very annoying. I was starting to get kind of like, oh my god, can I? Okay, I get it, because it was just constant in like dreams, and it was very persistent, I'll say, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, fine, I'll pray, I guess. And for me, like doing any kind of like ritual or prayer in terms of like a deity, it was something that I'd never done. And after I did that for the first time, I was like, shit, I actually have to like re-examine my entire worldview. Uh, and this might surprise you, maybe it certainly surprised me. My reaction to having the realization uh, that like no, I see deities as real. Having that realization actually caused me to re-examine the way that I had treated my family about them believing in God. I so I had an experience that made me re-examine my worldview and become not just like not a soft polytheist, but like a hard polytheist. And then I was like, oh shit, I was a real dick to my family about them believing in God. I actually called some family members and was like, I'm sorry. I actually called people and was like, I apologized, and we were actually able to have a really good conversation about it, which was really nice. I ended up feeling feeling that connection that I had never felt before, and I specifically felt it with some gods in the Norse pantheon. So that's why I describe myself as a Norse pagan, and as a witch. And I um, some Norse pagans have patron deities, and that's sort of like the deities that they focus on, or maybe more accurately, the deities that are like, you're mine now, depending on your situation. So for me, I have two patron deities, and they are Freya and Loki. And if you are somebody who is a heathen and you're watching this, or if you're somebody who is Norse pagan and you're watching this, or a Satyar or whatever, you might have some feelings about that one of my patron deities is Loki. And if you do, that's fine. Feel your feelings. Feel your feelings, it's fine. And if you are not familiar with uh, how controversial Loki can be in heathen communities, um, I can talk about that if that's something that you're interested in hearing about from my perspective as somebody who works with Loki a lot. So, yeah, so that's it. I guess I should probably stop there because I've been talking a really long time. But that's an introduction to me. I think one important thing for me to say is that because Norse paganism and heathenry, they're very, it's it's a very diverse religion and spirituality because it's I mean it's the nature of like a polytheistic religion where different people are focused on different aspects of the religion. Different people are focused on different deities. Some people are not focused on a particular deity. Some people are even kind of not involved with the deities and more involved with like nature spirits and stuff. So it's one of those things of like, if you meet another Norse pagan, it's very likely that their experience of their religion is nothing like mine. It's completely different, likely. So yeah, I hope that that was an understandable and cohesive enough introduction to who I am and what I believe. I hope that I'm able to have some interesting conversations on this channel about topics that I'm very interested in, and frankly, I don't I don't have enough people who want to have conversations about lucid dreaming and like different ways of thinking about deity and um, yeah, I don't really have enough people who want to really get in the weeds about this kind of stuff. So I hope I can find a group a group of people online who are interested in having these kind of conversations. Anyway, see you later.